Hi, everyone. Welcome to Kids and Faith, the podcast of Liberty Church of the River Wards. I'm John Alexander.
I'm Melissa Wood.
And I'm Stephen Wood.
And we are here to encourage you, to instruct you, and to fill you with
shame, boatloads of shame, day after day, more of the same.
No, seriously, though, we are not here to shame you. That's actually something we're trying to fight against. But in addition to being encouraged with you, getting instructed with you, we do want to push a certain level of conviction. And we talked about this in our first episode. If God's really called us to help in the rearing of young people, like in seeing kids grow up as faithful worshipers, citizens, adults, we need to push each other a little bit. It is difficult to talk about really anything related to conviction or pushing or any kind of like, hey, let's go ahead and do it. Let's do this hard thing without dipping into shame, you know? But the Bible talks about it a lot. Running the good race, loving with heart, soul, mind, and strength. There's no getting rid of effort. And so as we are working through topic by topic, these really relevant subjects related to kids and faith, know that we're aware of that slide into shame. Parents are full of shame. And we need to say, if you're in this kid's life, you can do it as a parent, even though you can't be the whole church for them. And guard against that shame, but also say, we've got work to do. There's hard work to do and hard topics to talk about, and we won't ignore them. We can't ignore them. There's too much at stake. And so today, largely, Stephen and Alyssa are going to be leading us in the first of two episodes about kids and technology. What do? It's everywhere. It's cool, technology. It's also scary. And the stakes are kind of high in terms of how we handle technology with our kids, if we're thinking about it at all.
Yeah, it's worth to just take off with what you were saying there about walking this fine line between shame and conviction. I feel like a lot of our parents, and us included, and even though our kids are younger, it seems like we particularly walk the fine line with this subject, where I would guess many of us parents would say, my children, they do too much of X technology, and we feel guilty about it. Or we're nervous to talk with folks about it because we'll feel judged. Someone else will have the rules that they're following better than us, and what we have rules that maybe we aren't following as much as we want to. It's in some ways it's kind of a scary thing to talk about. Be on a podcast with like a microphone in front of my face, because it's like we have our own goals as a family that we try and do that we do not always meet. And so there's that on the one hand, but also it's a subject where I sense in like the conversations I've had with folks where really like across like a very different people I've talked to in our church, like there's a pretty wide understanding, or at least a wide suspicion of technology, that like it's everywhere, but we know that it may not be the best thing for us. We've observed like how it affects us if we spend a day where we're just buried on our phones too much, or spend a day like buried playing video games, or a great example that many of us experience is like, how do you feel after you watch 6 hours of Netflix shows? You don't feel very good. And it's like we know enough that's like there needs to be some room for conviction here, but there's an added layer of like, I think, fear with it, and thinking about how to make decisions and how it affects our kids.
Yeah, I tend to feel a lot of shame with this question just because I have studied a lot of like the research about what technology does, especially to toddlers under the age of 4, to their brains. And we know just how much dopamine is released through screens, and it's just so addictive. And yeah, we try to limit screens in our home, but we don't really have any hard and fast rules other than like we try to limit it.
We try to limit it specifically in some ways. We have specific rules.
We do have specific rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind. Yeah. I guess I mean with like screens in general, like including cell phones and FaceTime and like what they're allowed to listen to with their radios. And so I guess if we were to zoom out, like the question of technology, it kind of encompasses more than just like iPads and TVs.
And police scanners. I saw your 3-year-old walking around with a police scanner and with a taser. So
What? Yeah.
you might want to rethink your... I mean, your limits aren't my limits. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying.
Maybe cut back on those key specific things.
It's also worth saying at the beginning. Sorry, am I interrupting you? It's just
No, go ahead.
that like we're gonna, in a lot of the assumptions underneath I think the way these episodes are gonna go, we'll see how they go, but is gonna be, how do we limit this thing? How do we situate this thing into like the greater life of our family, the greater goals of who we want to disciple our kids to be? But it's also worth saying like technology can be like really a relief and a help while parenting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like
Somebody just said amen.
so, yeah.
Somebody out there in radio land.
Yeah.
I heard it.
So I don't know. I had there was a story. I'm not going to, maybe you should share it, Alyssa. And just like before I go off and pontificate it all about technology,
Yes.
I should share a
With
story
his
about like
pontifatum.
how without technology, like my family would have been a mess.
Yeah. So, the men of our church have men's retreat once a year. It's, which means it's an annual weekend of solo parenting for the wives at Liberty. And every year it's like catastrophe, feels like it's right around the corner. Things always seem to go haywire while
No
Steven's
sleep
gone.
November.
Yeah, exactly. And for some reason, I don't remember really the specifics, but my anxiety levels were so high while Steven was gone this past. No, it was 2 men's retreats ago. This was
Yeah, and specifically on the
November
Friday
of
of men's retreat.
2021. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Friday of men's retreat right after he left, and I had like a full day to myself with the kids. It felt like their emotions were really high because we were out of the house and that there was a lot of whining. And so I was really overstimulated just with sound, and I was trying to cook them dinner, and I made a pizza to go easy on myself because why go in the next room and leave my 1 and 2-year-old in the next room to go berserk for 30 minutes while I cook. So I made a frozen pizza, had it in the oven, and smoke started rising out of the oven because grease had dripped onto the bottom of the oven. And I went into high anxiety mode and felt like I was having a panic attack. Could smell gas in the house, but it was really just the smell of smoke, but it sent my brain into panic mode of the house is filling with smoke. And I just couldn't get a deep breath in. And so I was like, you know what? I was trying to keep Jeremiah away from from watching TV until he turned 2. He was 1. And I put them both in front of, sing-along songs on YouTube and just let them watch one YouTube video after another to because I was having a panic attack, and I went upstairs and calmed down and did some deep breathing exercises and knew that the kids were safe because I took care of the smoke in the kitchen. And then I called a friend from Liberty, Allie, and was like, I am having a panic attack. I don't know if there's actual danger or if I am making it up in my head. So I want you to call and check on me in 45 minutes and see if my house is burning down. I can't tell if we're in an actual emergency or not. And she actually was able to be like, you did this last year while the men were at men's retreat, and it was the exact same thing that your brain went to. You always think your house is filling up with gas, and it's just something that I don't know what happened, but your brain just goes to that thing. Anyway, the screens really helped in that situation. That's a really long-winded story,
so the subplot, some technology heroes,
yes,
screens,
yes,
phone,
calling a friend,
technology villain, oven.
yes.
we need to get rid of oven technology.
Luddites with ovens.
We need to roll It's only getting better in terms of technology. Sorry. No, yeah. So we're all going to break our own rules. How about that
Yeah.
one? And to think about what we're doing is just wisdom. So we talked a little bit about this because this is a two-parter. We talked about how to talk about it. This is the episode about talking about how to talk about it, or maybe how would we frame it? The context for technology. What kind of families, what kind of churches do we want to help shape? What kind of children do we want to help raise? Before we get into in the next episode, what exactly do you do? Like just some concrete policies, or just some general wisdom that we're going to aim for, or that we're learning from others that seem to be wise. This first episode, though, is step back. So how else would you all frame that? Where we're going to go in this first episode?
Yeah, that's helpful. So often with this conversation, I sense there's an urgency to it, right? Is many of us, and Alyssa and I, we have two boys, ages 3 and 2. Something to put out up front. Like there are a number of the challenges with the question of technology that we haven't had to face yet. That there are parents who are listening to this podcast have had to face more sharply than us.
Though
'cause
I
their
will
kids
say
are
our
older.
3-year-old has already asked for his own cell phone.
Yeah. Did he really? Oh boy. Well, we'll get there. But there's an urgency with this question, and I often sense with the urgency we tend to want to go to the urgent questions, which are very important and worth taking time to address. When do I get when is it okay for me to get my child a smartphone? What kind of smartphone should it be? How can I make sure that certain things are walled off on the smartphone?
Yeah.
Super important questions, but we need to. I think it can be unhelpful to go to those, and I'm getting a lot of my ideas about this subject are coming from an author named Andy Crouch, who wrote a book that I would highly recommend called The TechWise Family, and he gives 10 rules. Yeah, he has like a summary PDF that's in like 1 or 2 pages somewhere on the internet that we could include in the show notes. That's outstanding. But one thing he doesn't get to the questions of like the hyper specifics, and it's based around 10 rules, and he doesn't get onto like the hyper specifics until like rule 7 or something.
Okay.
Because he really wanted the reader to face questions bigger, like situate these urgent questions into context of even bigger, more important questions. So
I feel like another way of putting that is he really focuses on, which we do this with a lot of how we talk about rules within our church. It's instead of focusing on like what are we not allowed to do, focus on what are we doing? What are the things we want to run towards rather than the things we want to limit or omit?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so this is what I would encourage everyone to do. And Alyssa and John, you can do this with me right now if you want. If you're listening to this podcast and thinking about like the wider context around the question of technology, I would encourage you, if you're driving on the road, maybe just take pause this podcast and think about your kids. Like imagine what they look like in your head. Let's consider their faces. If you're at a place where you could pull out a picture of your kids, that could be even more powerful. But look at a picture of them right now and consider what kind of woman do you want your daughter to be? What kind of man do you want your son to grow up to be? How would you want to describe the kind of man that your son will become when he's 25 years old? What kind of ways do you want to describe that you hope he will be? Who's the man you hope he will become? Take a second and think about that. I'm not going to have actual pause time in our podcast for the sake of recording, but if you have a pause button, you can hit it. And if you're someone who wants to remember these things, maybe you can even write it down like in your notes app or something.
Not while you're driving.
Not while you're driving, please. But I don't know. You here in this room, when you consider your children, when we consider our 2 sons, John, when he considers his son and 2 daughters, what are some answers you'd have for that question?
I think I would. That's funny. This is based on the day that I just had. watchful over self and the world. I guess just not asleep at the wheel. Self-aware, God-aware, kind of aware of neighbor and surroundings. Because that's something we're working on right now. That comes first. Faithful, loving, honest.
Yeah, I feel like the big one we're working on right now with toddler world that feels like the most pertinent at the moment is just like being able to withstand life's challenges without crumbling. Resiliency. 'Cause right now we're in a stage where if the shoe's on the wrong foot or the plate's the wrong color, their world turns upside down and they burst into tears. We're working on not literally falling to the floor over many things. Resilience. Absolutely would want them to be loving, full of joy, lasting joy, thoughtful. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I need more time for this assignment.
No, the quick reactions are valuable ones. I just made Alyssa laugh a little bit because I showed her a picture of a really cute picture of our oldest sitting against the wall in some PJs that I had when I was growing up, and he has like this huge smile on his face. And so some of the answers as I look at that picture that I think of, some of these answers that they come out of, we talked about this a bit before we started recording, how some of the answers for each of our kids are going to be a little different because our kids are different. And where some of some of discipling our kids and becoming more like Christ it's directing and teaching and exhorting, but it's also discovering who God has made them to be. And it's like some of the answers for my oldest son, who's just sensitive and sweet. It's like I want him to to be a flower that fully blooms. I want him to be compassionate and a good listener, and devoted and loyal. I also want him to be courageous. And John said honest in that one. That I hadn't thought of that one. I would want my sons to be honest. I hope that this exercise is at least a little bit moving for you all as you can think about it. And the follow-up question that an Andy Crouch would ask for as you consider these questions is how do we arrange our lives together as a family in order to pursue those goals of our kids becoming more like that. And of course, it's not just like a one-way direct path. Of course, it's a knotted out path where things happen and life is messy. But we do have power over some things which we can arrange in our lives. And we'll talk about the more specifics, I think, in the next episode. How can we be arranging the things in our lives in faith, trusting Jesus, knowing we're not perfect, seeking his help, towards our kids being conformed more to the image of Christ as they get older? How can we arrange those things? And the thing that Andy Crouch lands at is like he tries to boil down for his kids to like just a few things as possible. And he said he wants his kids to be wise and courageous. And he came to the conclusion himself where he's like, men and women, or kids growing up to men and women who are wise and courageous, that the primary place where those things are sharpened, formed, it's in relationships. It's with other people. And technology can sometimes hasten those things. It can help make it easier for connection with other people. But on the whole, technology really is on the outer fringes of the picture of how do our kids become more like that. And I think that's just really helpful background to consider.
Well, and maybe we should just say that again. So I'm going to do a paraphrase. You tell me how close I am to the bullseye of his meaning.
Do.
Andy Crouch would say, technology actually plays a very small role in forming the people that we aspire to be, and forming the people we aspire for our children to become. If you look at the top, say, 10 resources, settings, instruments that we could use, that we could avail ourselves of, relationships, rhythms of life, communities, institutions, whatever. Take the top 10 things you could make use of to cultivate those traits in your children. Technology is not going to be on that top 10 list, possibly at all, of any kind.
Possibly, technology is often a thing which deforms us from actually becoming those. It actually does the opposite work.
Okay.
And maybe that's a bit stark, a bit controversial. But
and we are going to talk about good technologies in the next episode.
Yes,
for
you
sure.
Say as my living room
But-
is full of microphones and
but it-
wires.
Yes.
Right. Yes, as we say through a podcast.
Yeah.
But this would be one for people to chew on. Yeah, and I think we're gonna get into that in the next episode, or is that this one? How has technology helped you? Was that for this episode, or is that going to kick off the next one?
that was
Maybe that could be a cliffhanger.
But we could talk about that now. Maybe that's where we could conclude this one.
And invite people between this episode and the next one. Send in your feedback. Like, what are ways that in the journey of you becoming who you are, or the people you admire, or maybe some of you grayheads, as you've seen your children grow up, you did see technology in a key role, really cultivating who they could become. Or maybe you have another story to tell. Maybe you can kind of agree with Crouch that that wasn't in the top 10. No technology was in the top 10 of most helpful things. And just to help people imagine, I think a lot of where I go to the church, family time. I'll tell you right now, one of my suspicions is just our car. Like travel has been incredibly formative for my family. It's been awesome to have a car, to get on the L, to get on a train, to get on a plane. Few boats in our story as so far, but Victor built a boat one time. He just told us while he was plugging in the microphone. I got to hear more of that story.
Today.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get on a boat with Victor
I have a lot
sometime
of questions.
and cultivate faithful children. No, but seriously, that's one. That's my one. I don't know exactly where Crouch's
Yeah.
head's at, but the point at the same time is well taken. Like when I think about the things that are going to form me and my kids, I don't know how many other technologies are there. Live events are big for us, games, even the neighborhood kids playing stickball or baseball or football, prayer, family, friends, meeting new people, playgrounds, books, church, all these things. Yeah, technology, other kinds of technology, except for maybe our car is probably not there. But I got to think about it more. Why don't you all think about yours? Think about you listeners, talking to you now. Let's let this be a good place to end for today. What are the technologies that have shaped you? And as you think about the good aspects of your formation and the formation of people around you who are close to you, where has technology been in bringing out that good stuff, that stuff that's refined us? As St. Peter says, the stuff that makes us refined like gold on our journey to face the King. So where has technology been in that? I really want to know. That is not that's not just like a fake question. I'm going to chew on it. You do the same, and fight the shame. Fight the shame.
Fight the shame.
Fight the shame.
We love you. See you next time.
Bye.